Hey everyone, this is John. Thanks for coming out to a Thursday. This is number 2 in our caricature entertainment tutorial series, helping people get better through critique. Do you have any questions, concerns, or just want to say a hello? Please put that in our chat. Please put it in our group text or even email that information to us. So with that, today we're going to be looking at part of the Magnificent Seven that I've detailed out in our critique series. The 7 things that I'm looking for when we're looking at artwork is 1, can we make it cuter? 2, can we make it funnier? 3, can we show it in a different style? 4, can we have a different composition? 5, can we play around with perspective? 6, can we do line work better? Or 7, is there something we can change with coloring? So today we're going to take a piece offered out by Martin from our Escondido North County Fair Mall location. We'll pull up the drawing. Here we have Bob. So the sketch of Bob. When I look at it, number one, you can see that the artist, Martin in this case, drew exactly what she was looking at. We've got this really rambunctious gesture of the tongue sticking out, wearing a cool, what looks to be some kind of fun doggy hat. Um, what's interesting about this dog, if I'm correct, Martin can correct me, is that the dog was also blind. So there's a lot going on in this picture, and I think she handled it well. Definitely a classic, quick sketch for retail. But today we're going to be looking at this drawing of Bob. I'll zoom out here and show Bob. And we're going to see if there's a way we can take the components that are in the drawing and make Bob even cuter, as if that's even possible. So we have Bob. So what we're going to do today with Bob's sketch is we're going to look into a classic technique that I once learned in school from another artist. Never heard this word before in my life. Contrapposto. Contrapposto, I guess translation is counterpose. And contrapposto, if I'm looking at a picture, um, I can see that even though I don't look at the whole, I'm going to actually switch the pictures. Even though I don't look at the whole body, I know that this classic technique is talking about shifting of weight from one side to the other. And usually it's the whole torso, starting with your hips into your shoulder. But as we look at drawing, we know that one leads into the other. And so when we're looking at this counterpose, the reason why we consider this is number one, there's a lot of different elements that will showcase asymmetry. So basically one plane counter existing against another. We're going to be looking at S curves. For those who maybe know a little bit of comic books, it's that classic movement from one plane into the other, but it flows. And then also looking about that relationship of the torso, the hips, the shoulders, and how it leads into the head and face. Now, the reason why we want to consider contrapposto or the counterpose when we're trying to make something cute is number one, it's going to make your drawing automatically look more dynamic. Secondly, we're going to make it look more lifelike. And especially when you look at something like Bob, how can we not want a little more lifelike movement to this awesome little face? So if I were drawing the human body, and this being the head, I'm doing classic stick figure, right? So if I draw your entire body, and I draw it directly anatomically, top to bottom, we might say that this is missing life. So with contrapposto, or as we like to call it, the counterpose, what we're going to do is we're going to look at this point, uh, and then I like to also look at this point and how they all relate. All right. So if I'm going to take the body, all I'm going to do to counter the pose is if I take the hips, for example, tilt against the shoulders, tilt, and then I will leave the head alone for just a moment. What that does is it gives the illusion that all the weight is being put onto this hip as this one, which might have to move a little more forward, is being relieved of that stress. And to counter that, your shoulder will normally go up. Okay? So opposites, counter pose. Now, I put the head on top of that because if I'm going to have a tilt to the head, I'm sorry, to the shoulders, I may as well do the same to the head. Now, in the most basic understanding, the word I'm using continually will be tilt. And I'm always thinking about opposing tilts so that I don't have flat planes. So if I, in my imagination of creating this form, if I've tilted this forward, I almost imagine that possibly that the tilt of the hips is also matching the tilt in the face or the head. So because I'm only focusing on this part in caricature, I'm still mindful that everything's happening down here. Now, when I talk about tilt, let's make sure we understand. If this is our classic face, classic T, if I'm tilting, I'm rotating the sphere. Now, if you want it in a more three-dimensional way, you might have seen some of this. So I know that this form, this tilt, is still matching in a three-dimensional form. Now, the reason I can do this is I know if my neck connects here, it's probably going to have to, well, how can that happen, right? It's not moving. You can't have your head tilt and your neck. So I'm going to do opposing. So even though I know the head's tilting this way, to contrast it, I'm going to make the neck match where the shoulders are going to be. Okay. So you might see this with a lot of girls where they'll put a shoulder out or they'll rotate their body and tilt their shoulders towards you. It's a classic move for cute. Now all I have to do is apply this same concept to bob. So I want to be able to maintain the balance. So from flat to tilt to balance, where one counters the other. And more than likely, I'm going to choose a 3/4 view, not just because it's a dog, but also I feel like it'll complement and add to this counter pose. So let's get right into drawing Bob. Now, because he's wearing the hat, I also want to be mindful of that. I see that in the picture, uh, the artist Martin chose a down view, which puts the hat over the face. Because I'm tilting, I want to make sure that I have that hat out of the way. So if I want to start with the hat just to move it out. So this hat is tilting up. So just like I said, I'm going to contrast. And I'm going to have his eyes. So already you can see that counterpose of the hat versus the eyes. Okay. And because I'm going to block this out, here's Bob's nose. And he's a small dog, so I want to be mindful of that when I'm drawing him. The eyes are going to tell a lot of the story. So again, I'm doing kind of a 3/4 view, so I'm going to, just so I can show you, you can see that a lot of the weight, which would be balanced, is now going to be transferred to this side here. And less on this side here. Okay. Same thing with the snout. So less weight on this side, more on this side. But you can see all my lines are already contrasting each other. So because the eyes are tilting right to left, I'm going to follow that up here in the snout, because it would look really awkward if suddenly the snout were to go the opposite direction. Now I'm going to give it this really fun tongue, because that's part of the picture. And then I'm going to come down. Here you can see we have the hat. If you look at the brim, is on the same plane as the eyes, which is the same plane as the nose. So nowhere in here is there any contrast. And so if the head's tilting this way, I'm going to go the opposite. So I'm going to put his shoulder higher and his lower shoulder lower. So now it's going left to right. So contrasting here, hat's going left to right, contraposing against the eyes and the snout, going right to left. Now shoulders going down left to right. I'm going to add in a few things here. It's a big brimmed hat. Pull that out. Get some wild hair. Maybe in a future session, we'll talk about how to handle wild hair. We'll add just extras. Here the bowl of the hat. Now it's another interesting choice here with Bob. In every picture, the ears are even counterposing. I don't know if that's on purpose. I remember they did request his ears up, but for dynamics and again being more lifelike, well, let's counterpose them. So if one is going up, let's give him what his dynamics actually are. We'll change the plane here too. So looking at the differences between where I'm at, we'll go back to our reference. Here's Bob. Again, same planes, still looking cute, uh, but everything from the hat brim, hats are on the same plane, eyes are on the same plane, nose is on the same plane to the eyes and to the hat, and then the fur is not uh, distributed well. So going back now to where I'm at with this drawing, a little different. So with just a few small changes, I've now distributed the weight just for contrast here. See that a little better. I'm not really sure about how this hat works. So one more time, even with my lines, I'm really accenting that counterpose, the hat. Now the lines are radiating and following it. So I wouldn't go uh, creating lines that counter. I want to accent the movement of the hat. So with my fur, because they're on the same plane, you're going to see here's where I'll really accent uh, this plane. So everything's going to be, uh, again, right down to the left. There's my nose. Make sure that these are not on the same plane because we're still following the right to fall to the left. So I'm going to make sure those lines play into that as well. I'm not sure it's some kind of super mutt. When I draw dogs, instead of blowing up their name across the screen, I'll just put it on a name tag. Again, here's my, I want to lay up the fact that this shoulder is a lot lower. So really give him some extra fur. We got Bob looking fantastic. Look over here in the reference picture. He's got some wild hair going on in his ears. Let's put even more weight on this side of the drawing. Really emphasize that this side is heavier than this side. So even doing things like putting more hair. That's Bob, everybody. So if I go back, let's look at the reference picture of Bob. There he is. When you look at this as a drawing, you can see what I'm talking about with the contrapposto, the counterpose, the hat brim going left down to the right, even the arch of the top of the hat, left to right. You could counterpose that, one ear much higher than the other, playing on that right down to the left. If you look at the eyes, I even pushed it a little bit more, going right down to the left, nose and nostrils right down to the left. But really, what real sells this, even though I don't see it in the picture, is creating that counterpose in the shoulders. And so here's the original sketch by Martin. Again, this is what we look at in retail. We can definitely say that this is going to sell. The choices here, staying in the same planes, but you can compare it now to the final. And that's Bob. So when you look at it again, one of the things in the Magnificent Seven is how do I make this a little more cute? It's not about just the features, not drawing bigger eyes. Sometimes it's just being mindful of where the body is and how you can use some traditional techniques to push and pull those planes with the tilt. But all of these are creating that lifelike, dynamic feel to the drawing. Well, that's it. Let's look at that Magnificent Seven and make our caricatures even more cute. Use techniques like contrapposto, counterpose. Think about where the weight's coming from, even though you don't see the hips, even though you don't see the torso. If you have the shoulders tilted against the head, you've got yourself a dynamic, lifelike movement. These small, simple ways will improve your caricatures and give it even more appeal. Well, thank you for being here. Thanks for everybody who's been watching us on YouTube. Feel free to drop in our Zoom sessions every Wednesday and Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. My name's John with the Caricature Entertainment. Hey, everyone. Keep it simple, personal, and memorable.